So imagine you are standing right at the base of this giant wall.
Okay.
But this wall is not made of rough stone or brick or anything you can grab. It is made of solid, perfectly polished glass.
Oh, wow. That sounds impossible.
Right, it is. There are no bumps, there are no ridges, like absolutely zero cracks anywhere. It is entirely 100% flawless.
Just a completely smooth surface.
Exactly. And your task is to climb it. So you step up, you reach out your hands, and your palms they slide straight down the cold glass.
Because there's literally nothing to hold on to.
Nothing at all to grip. You look up at this massive structure and you realize you cannot take even a single step. You are just entirely frozen at the bottom.
Yeah, that is a really suffocating feeling to imagine.
It really is.
Yeah.
And welcome to the deep dive, by the way, because that exact frozen feeling is what our sources today are exploring. We have this really fascinating stack of notes centered around a very liberating theme, which is that perfection is a myth.
It is a complete myth.
So our mission for today's deep dive is to explore how to approach learning, and especially learning English for all of you listening, without letting that fear of making errors keep you paralyzed at the bottom of that glass wall.
I love that glass wall analogy because it is such a powerful way to visualize a psychological concept our notes call the trap of perfection.
The trap of perfection. Yes, let's get into that.
Well, we often trick ourselves, right? We think that setting these flawlessly high standards will, motivate us to work harder.
Like pushing ourselves to be the best.
Exactly. But cognitively, when you demand absolute perfection from yourself, you essentially create that smooth glass surface. It is impossible to interact with.
Right, because your brain recognizes that the standard cannot actually be met.
Exactly. So instead of wasting energy trying and failing, your brain just initiates a false response.
Oh, so that action paralysis kicks in.
Yes. You are caught in this mental trap where doing nothing feels a lot safer than doing something imperfectly.
That keyword there, trap, is just so central to what we are unpacking today for you. Because when you expect, say, flawless grammar or perfect pronunciation from yourself, you are not actually setting a goal.
You really are.
You are setting a trap. You get caught in this weird loop where the desire to be entirely correct completely backfires on you.
It is the ultimate irony of perfectionism. It destroys the exact learning process it claims to support.
Yeah.
If we look at this through the lens of language learning, a learner gets caught in this trap because they become just hyper-focused on being correct.
Right, capital C, correct.
They want every single verb, tense to align perfectly, every vocabulary word to be precise.
And every accent to sound completely native.
Exactly. But because being 100% correct is, frankly, an impossible standard for any learner, the mind reacts with a really strong emotion. It makes you afraid.
Afraid, yeah, that makes so much sense. You become terrified of a slight mispronunciation or using the wrong preposition.
Right, the stakes feel huge.
So instead of just participating in a casual conversation, you stay completely silent. You are so afraid of not being correct that you remove yourself from the learning experience altogether.
Which brings us to a really raw, honest sentence from the source material. It is a thought that I think almost every single learner has experienced at some point.
Oh, definitely.
The sources quote this sentiment: I am afraid to make mistakes.
Wow, yeah. I am afraid to make mistakes. It is so simple, but so heavy.
Think about when you are standing in line at a coffee shop, right?
Oh, the coffee shop scenario.
You are rehearsing your order in English in your head over and over. I would like a large latte. I would like a large latte.
And then you actually get to the front of the line.
And you just point at the menu instead of speaking.
Yes, you just point and nod.
That is that fear in action. Your brain is interpreting a simple language mistake, not as a tiny error, but as a massive social threat.
I think everyone listening can relate to that coffee shop moment. Like, you know the words are in your head, but the fear of a tiny stumble just keeps your mouth shut.
It paralyzes you.
And that leads directly to the second core sentence our sources highlight, which is, perfection stops me from starting.
Perfection stops me from starting.
Yeah.
That is the absolute truth.
It really hits the nail on the head, because the main problem isn't bad grammar. The main problem is the blank page. It's the silence.
Right.
The intense desire for perfection literally stops you from even opening your mouth to start the sentence.
And that is the true danger here. Because if you never start, you never gather the real-world feedback you need to actually learn the language.
You are just standing at the bottom of the glass wall forever.
Exactly. You are frozen.
So, okay, if the smooth glass wall stops us from starting, how are we supposed to climb? The notes offer this really fascinating shift in perspective.
They do. It is a complete mindset change.
Yeah, if we want to move upward, we have to stop looking for a perfectly smooth surface. We have to start actively searching for the cracks.
The cracks are everything, because a crack in the wall gives you a place to actually put your fingers.
Right.
It gives you a rough spot to plant your foot. In our climbing metaphor, the crack is the mistake.
The crack is the mistake.
Yes, and this completely shifts the dynamic of learning. It moves us toward a concept the sources talk about, which is finding the hidden value in our errors.
Now, I have to jump in here because the sources use a specific phrase here. Beautiful mistakes.
Yes. Beautiful mistake.
And I want to push back on this just a little bit, or at least, share a very real frustration that I think you listeners might feel too.
Go for it.
Theory is great, but in reality, making a mistake does not feel beautiful.
Not at all.
When I am in a meeting and I use the wrong word, or I just completely lose my train of thought in a second language, my face gets hot.
Oh, the blushing, yeah.
I start to sweat. I feel deeply, deeply uncomfortable and embarrassed. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we go from knowing a mistake is supposedly beautiful on paper to actually dealing with feeling humiliated in that moment?
That is honestly the most important question to ask.
Yeah, right.
Because that physical feeling of embarrassment is very, very real.
It is visceral.
Your face getting hot is a biological reaction. But to understand the beauty in the crack, we have to look at the concept of flawed beauty.
Flawed beauty.
Yes.
Yeah.
A flaw is a mark, right? It's a fault or an imperfection. But why is a flaw valuable?
Why?
Because a mistake is not a permanent label of your intelligence. A mistake is simply a physical mark of learning.
A physical mark of learning. Okay, I really like the sound of that. But break down the actual mechanism for me. How does making that flaw actually help us?
Well, think about what happens when you make a mistake in conversation. You use the wrong word, the other person looks slightly confused.
The dreaded confused look. Yeah.
Right, and then you realize your error, maybe you laugh awkwardly, and you correct yourself.
Sure.
In that specific moment, your brain experiences a tiny spike of adrenaline.
Because of the mild embarrassment.
Exactly. That emotional spike actually helps cement the correct word in your memory.
Right.
Far better than reading it silently in a textbook 10 times.
Wow, so the emotion anchors the memory.
Exactly. The flaw creates the friction required for memory.
So the friction is the foothold on the wall. That is how you climb.
Yes. Furthermore, speaking a language perfectly, like an automated computer program reading text, it is actually quite cold.
Yeah.
It lacks emotion and vulnerability. Showing that you are human, that you stumble, that you search for words, that you smile and try again, that is what actually creates a real connection with the person listening.
That is a profound shift in thinking. We spend so much energy trying to sound like polished, perfect machines.
We really do.
But being human is what actually draws people in. When you show your humanity through a flaw, the person you are talking to doesn't usually judge you. They empathize with you.
Because they are human too.
Exactly. They see your effort. They see that you are actively working to improve.
And, to improve is impossible without vulnerability. You cannot improve your speaking skills if you do not try. And you cannot try without exposing yourself to the possibility of a flaw. You are essentially taking the mistake out of the mental category of shame and moving it into the category of growth.
Which makes this next sentence from our sources so much more practical than it first sounds. The sentence is, there is beauty in imperfection.
There is beauty in imperfections.
Like, it isn't just a poetic, feel-good phrase. It literally means that the slightly messy, imperfect conversations you have are the ones that actually build your skills and your relationships.
Building on that, the sources offer another anchor for our mindset, which is a mistake is a lesson, not a failure.
A mistake is a lesson, not a failure. I love that.
If your brain views a mistake as a failure, it will avoid speaking at all costs to protect you.
Because brains want to protect us from failure.
Exactly. But if you actively train your brain to categorize a mistake as a lesson, the entire landscape changes. The cracks in the wall become the exact places you put your hands to pull yourself higher.
I am completely on board with this psychological shift. Recategorizing a threat as a lesson makes perfect sense. But I want to challenge us again.
Go ahead.
It is one thing to sit here listening to us and think, okay, my mistakes are just lessons. It is a completely different challenge to open a blank email at work and actually start typing in a second language.
Oh, completely different.
How do we move from appreciating our mistakes in our minds to actually taking action in our daily lives.
That is where the philosophy has to meet the pavement, so to speak. The sources argue that we must shift from a passive appreciation of our flaws to active momentum.
Active momentum.
Yes, they refer to this as actionism, which is basically developing a strong intentional bias toward taking action, regardless of how messy that action might be.
Actionism. Okay, that actually reminds me of an analogy we found in the notes regarding the standard of good enough.
Oh, the bridge analogy. I love this one.
Yeah, the bridge. So imagine you are trying to build a bridge across a really wide river because you urgently need to reach the other side. Now, you could sit on the bank for 10 years, you could carve perfect decorations into the wood, you could measure every single plank to the millimeter and, paint it a flawless color.
Making it the perfect bridge.
Exactly. But while you are doing all that perfect work, you are still stuck on the wrong side of the river.
You haven't gone anywhere. Meanwhile, another person throws down some rough planks of wood, nails them together quickly, and just walks across.
Right.
Their bridge is ugly. It is flawed. But they are already on the other side of the river, making friends and living their life. The bridge does not need to be a masterpiece. It just needs to carry your weight.
I love how that applies to communication, because if your goal is to share an idea in a meeting or write an update to your team, your English does not need to be a perfectly carved masterpiece.
It really doesn't.
It just needs to be a bridge that gets your meaning from your brain to the other person's brain. It just needs to be good enough.
The standard of enough is incredibly freeing. When you accept that your sentences only need to be clear, enough to be understood, you suddenly unlock the ability to make progress.
Progress. That is the magic word.
Progress means moving forward, putting one foot in front of the other. The opposite of progress isn't making a mistake. The opposite of progress is standing perfectly still.
So the strategy for daily learning becomes incredibly simple then. You don't aim for flawless. You ensure your message is clear. Enough, you focus entirely on your progress, and even when you stumble, you simply keep going.
You push through the friction. You keep going.
By focusing on progress, you move your attention away from that impossible, paralyzing finish line of perfection.
Right. And you place your attention entirely on the continuous journey of action. You build momentum. And, momentum is the ultimate antidote to fear.
The sources distill this entire concept into a famous rule that I think every listener should write down and put on a sticky note on their monitor.
Oh, absolutely.
The rule is, done is better than perfect.
Done is better than perfect.
When you look at the reality of daily life, a finished email with 2 small grammar mistakes is infinitely more useful than a perfect email that just sits in your drafts folder forever.
Yes.
A completed conversation where you had to pause and search for a word is infinitely better than an empty, silent room.
Done is better than perfect, because done actually exists in the real world. Perfect only exists in your imagination.
Wow, that is so true. Perfect isn't real. And the final piece of this puzzle from our notes gives us the actual math for how to sustain this mindset.
The math is my favorite part.
The sources suggest adopting this core belief, I am 1% better every day, just 1%.
The brilliance of the 1% target lies in how it bypasses the brain's fear center.
How so?
Well, if you tell yourself you need to be a 100% fluent or 100% better today, your amygdala, which is the part of the brain responsible for fear, detects a massive, overwhelming threat.
And it shuts you down.
Exactly. You freeze at the glass wall again. But 1%, the brain looks at a 1% challenge and says, oh, that's not dangerous. We can do that.
It completely removes the pressure. 1% better just means learning one single new phrase today.
Right.
It means sending one short email. It means speaking up for 30 seconds in a meeting, making a beautiful mistake, and realizing that you survived it. It is so small that you cannot possibly be paralyzed by it.
And if we look at the mechanism of compounding habits, small, tiny steps of progress done consistently build incredible momentum.
They really add up.
Over weeks and months, that 1% compounds into massive visible growth. The heavy, crushing pressure of perfection just disappears, and it is replaced by the quiet, unstoppable confidence of steady action.
So what does this mean for you listening to us right now? Whether you are about to practice your English, write a message to a colleague, or start a completely new project, your goal today is not to be flawless.
No.
Your goal is simply to be done. Your goal is to be human. Your goal is to be just 1% better than you were yesterday.
If we summarize our deep dive today, we've really traced a path from paralysis to freedom.
We really have.
First, we explore the trap of perfection, understanding that demanding an impossible standard only makes us afraid and keeps us silent.
Right.
Second, We learned to look at the climbing wall differently. We reframed our flaws not as failures, but as necessary footholds,
Yeah.
the friction required to learn and improve.
Beautiful mistakes.
Exactly. And finally, we realized that replacing the illusion of perfection with the reality of steady, messy progress is the only true way forward.
You know, since our sources so clearly define a mistake as a lesson rather than a failure, it brings up a really powerful thought to leave you with.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Think back to that perfectly smooth glass wall we talked about at the very beginning. The one with absolutely no cracks, the one that is physically impossible to climb.
The wall of perfect.
What if the only true failure isn't slipping on the wall? What if the true failure is standing safely at the bottom of that wall forever? What if the real tragedy is letting the desire to be entirely correct? Keep your voice entirely silent. I want you to leave this deep dive with a challenge. Instead of avoiding the cracks, I want you to actively look for them. Ask yourself, what beautiful mistake will you dare to make today?